We're going to talk about formatting percentages and formatting fractions. So formatting percentages. We're going to work off the number group in the Home tab, as we have been for the last few movies. And we're going to format these two values as percentages. Now, what you might think would happen is that 0.01 will be 1% and 1 will be 100%. Formatting those as percentages, that's exactly what does happen. But the thing about percentages is it matters whether you format the cell after you enter the content or before you enter the content. Because when I format these two cells as a percentage, and then I enter 0.01, I get 1%, something you probably would expect. But when I enter 1, I also get 1%. So it's just something to be aware of. When you format the cells as percentage before, you get a different result than if you format the cells afterwards. Whether you enter a whole number or a decimal, that number will still be formatted as the same percentage. You can also format the cell while you're entering content. 1%, Control Enter. That cell is now formatted in the percentage format style, and it displays as 1%. So now we're going to take a look at fractions. I'm going to enter some decimals into these cells. 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1.5. And then I'm going to select these cells by dragging over them and convert these decimals to a fraction by selecting that choice on the drop-down menu. So when we convert these numbers to fractions, they're stored as decimals. That's still 1.5. It's shown as 1.5, which is the fractional equivalent of 1.5. But they're all stored as decimals. And since we have a fraction selected, I'm going to launch the Format Cells dialog box. And we are on the Number tab in the fraction category. And there's a sample that is showing of the type that's selected. And coincidentally, the example is exactly the same as the cell, 1/4. But there are 9 different types of fractions that you can establish as a formatting style. You have to select at least one of them. And you say, well, wait a minute, we didn't select one when we converted those 4 cells to the fraction style. No, we didn't, but there was a default that was established for us. So these 9 choices have to do with rounding conventions. And each one of these cells I have pre-formatted to be, in this case, the 1-digit, 2, 3-digit, the halves, the quarters, and so on. So when I put a fraction in here, that's our starting point, 580 over 2,000. If we input that into a cell that has the 1-digit rounding convention, we get the fraction rounded so that the denominator has 1 digit and then the numerator is whatever it calculates it should be. The 2-digit rounding convention gives us 2 digits in the denominator. 3 gives us 3. We can also round this fraction to the nearest half, or the nearest quarter, or the nearest eighth, 16th, 10th, or hundredths. So we can format the cells after we enter content to a fraction style. We can format the cells before. And the third verse to the common theme we've been singing for the last couple of movies is we can format the cells while we're entering content. So I'm going to enter a fraction 3/8, 3 divided by 8, Control Enter. And Excel thinks I want to enter a date, March 8th. In fact, March 8th, 2013. I didn't even put a year in there. Both of those results, the fact that it's a date and the fact that it's a date in the current year, are defaults. In fact, I could put 1 divided by 31, and I would get, as you might suspect at this point, January 31st. But how about 1 divided by 32? I still get a date, even though there's no January 32nd. In fact, if I enter any fraction, quote unquote, that has 2 digits in the numerator that is 1 through 12, and 2 to 4 digits in the denominator, I'm going to end up with a date. So in order to enter a fraction, if we want to enter 3/8, for instance, you have to enter 0 space 3 divided by 8 and then enter. And that value will be stored as a decimal and displayed as a fraction because the cell's formatting style will be converted to fraction. So that's formatting percentages and fractions. We looked at the percentage formatting option, where it matters if you format the cell as a percentage either before or after you enter content. The fraction formatting style has 9 different rounding conventions. The numbers will be stored as a decimal and displayed as a fraction. And if you want to enter a fraction and format the cell at the same time, you have to enter a 0 space and then the fraction. Otherwise, you could end up with a date.